listeners, and welcome to another episode of Extra Extra. It's all about whiskey. I'm your host, Jason Three Names. I'm joined, as always, with the Whiskey Whippet. Lovely to see you, even though our dear listeners don't get to join me in that pleasurable experience. Joshua Morrissey Hatton.
It's lovely, lovely, lovely to be seen. Thank you for having me today.
In Extra Extra, Joshua and I bring a news story to the attention of the other, often whiskey focused, but not always. Bring it to the attention of the other. We read in the first half, we riff on it in the second half. We try to get out of here in a tight 30 to 35 minutes. The last episode, which was thoroughly enjoyable, ran a wee bit longer, but it was a fine conversation that was worth the extra time, I thought.
I didn't, but, that's fine.
It's funny you say that because they were all your words.
Just a self-deprecating joke, that's all.
So sometimes we mix it up a little bit. And there's actually been a couple of tidbits of news in the last 6 days that's really caught our attention and the attention of whiskey fans, whiskey lovers everywhere. So we're actually going to cover a couple of stories today and still keep it to a tight 30 to 35 minutes because that's how good we are.
Wow, this is a challenge.
Do you want me to roll up first with the story from last week?
Why don't you do that? I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, so we're going to delve into the spirits business. We have a headline that just lays it all on the line. Pernod Ricard to acquire the Whisky Exchange. Published September 21, 2021 by Alice Brooker. Well, there's a fair few words here, so let's delve into them and see what we have. I love the opening to this. Beef eater owner Pernod Ricard. Pausing for 1 second. You know you're reading the spirits business and not the whiskey business when it starts with beef eater owner Pernod Ricard. Because you and I, with everything we know about whiskey, there's about 5 other things I would say Pernod Ricard own, and I wouldn't really go straight to beef eater.
Yeah, right? Like maybe you start off with one of their world famous whiskey blends that sells millions of cases per year. When we're talking about the purchase of the largest whiskey online retailer in the world. But nope, it's a gin. It's the owner of a gin production company that's purchased a whiskey online retailer.
So I'll tell you what's also interesting is on the story that opens with beef eater owner. Right now, my screen is blowing up with Gibson's London dry gin ads. Like the page is just moving and changing focus and pulling back. It's a lot. So Gibson's are really trying to get my attention when the article opens with beef eater.
Boy, are they ever. Wow.
So here we go. Beef eater owner Pernod Ricard has agreed to buy the Whisky Exchange to enhance its e-commerce growth and premium offerings. A little bit about the Whisky Exchange. The Whisky Exchange was founded in 1999 by Sukhinder and Rajbir Singh and boasts a catalogue of approximately 10,000 products. That's quite impressive.
It's huge.
Pernod Ricard's acquisition of the retailer was carried out for an undisclosed sum. That's always the first question, isn't it? Like, what happened? And for how much?
Exactly. No, we're not disclosing that. Thank you. Move on. These aren't the droids you're looking for.
The Singh brothers commented, after more than 20 years building the Whisky Exchange, we're delighted to be joining the Pernod Ricard family and working with them to take the business to the next level. The quote continues, the Whisky Exchange and our customers have always felt like a family, and we are looking forward to maintaining this ethos with a partner that shares our values. End quote. Since its establishment, the spirits retailer has expanded to on-trade supply, private sales, and auctions of rare spirits. Sukhinder recently sold a selection of old and rare miniatures at auction. And regular listeners know I really love Sukhinder Singh. Miniature collections give me the heebie-jeebies. We then return to quotes from Sukhinder and Rajbir. Our mission remains the same, to offer the finest range of whiskies and spirits from the best producers around the world, educate and engage with consumers, and support the top on-trade establishments around the UK. Pernod, that was end of quote. Pernod is aiming to meet consumer needs with the partnership, with a focus on e-commerce growth and demand for premium spirits. So that's the same line that was really way back up in the top of this article. It hasn't really added any dressing to that original statement.
No.
And so now we have Alexandre Ricard. I tried to pronounce that like he was a Formula One racing driver. How did I do?
I thought that he was actually a Starfleet captain.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cups of tea for him.
Yep. Earl Grey.
So
Hot.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Earl Grey.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot. Would you like some tea?
No.
So Alexandre Ricard is chairman and CEO. I actually lit a Gauloise while I was pronouncing his name.
Do you know if you smashed Pernod Ricard together, you would just get Picard?
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but
Shut up, Wesley.
We're here for the hard-hitting insights, Joshua. Thank you.
Yep, continue.
Back to the story at hand. Chairman and CEO of Pernod Ricard explained, e-commerce is a key channel in our long-term strategy. We are thrilled to work with industry pioneers such as Sukhinder, Raj Beer, and the whole team to bring the Whisky Exchange to a new step of its development. Pernod Ricard, that's the end of quote. Pernod Ricard will also support collaborations between the Whisky Exchange's expertise and its in-house platforms such as Drinks & Co. and Boda Boca.
Interesting.
I have a question for you when we're done reading.
Okay.
The deal does not include specialty brands or elixir distillers, which are also owned by the Singh brothers. Final sentence, Pernod Ricard recently gained a minority stake in bamboo rum producer Sovereign Brands. That's the end of the article. So rather than go to a break at this point, I want to quickly come back to my question, which is, have you heard of Boda Boca?
I have not heard of Boda Boca. You know, the thing is with the Whisky Exchange and specialty drinks and elixir and whiskey.auction, there's so many bits and bobs to their business, and I think there's a lot of bobs and or bits that I simply don't know about.
Yeah, they've got so many fingers in so many pies. It's hard to keep track of what's in all of those pies.
Yeah, what I do know, however, because you know this news broke around 6 days ago, and being with the importer of some of these elixir brands, right? Portascaig, Single Malts of Scotland, Black Tot Rum. The question was, okay, what does this mean for us? And by us, I mean those are our distributors reaching out to us as the importers, saying, you know, what do we do now? And the answer to that is, you don't do anything, because business continues the way it always has, because the elixir distillers part of it, which includes the new distillery they're building on Islay, which includes brands like Elements of Islay and Black Tot and, you know, all the others that I mentioned before. They're simply not included.
Question for you on that front, and I know it's a very scary moment when, as an importer, you see Distillery X sells to big player Y, because invariably big player Y wants to take charge of importation and distribution.
Sure.
As an importer, contracts are in place. Does the sale of the distiller to big player Y render the contracts moot? And you'll basically get a rundown, a period of months to run down stock, and then you know the relationship is over? Or do contracts have to be honoured before new contracts are then signed for the new importation and distribution that big player Y wants to put in place?
That's an excellent question. I think it really gets down to that initial contract and how it's written. And are there protections in place for that importer for X amount of time, should something like that take place? And to be fair, not every brand coming into the U.S., whether it's a whiskey brand or a gin brand or what have you, it's not necessarily tied to contracts, especially when you get to some of the smaller brands. So, sometimes you're just two companies trying to work together and you hope everything works out. And sometimes you just have contracts in place. So, I can't, when it comes to contracts between Impex and other companies, that has always been none of my business, so I've never tried to put my nose in that business. But as someone who has helped to write contracts before for other companies, I can tell you it really gets down to that origin contract and how it's written.
Well, I think it's striking. One of the first things you and I exchanged over text when we saw the news was you saying, wearing my Impex hat, I now have to answer questions from distributors saying, how does this affect us? And the good news was, and this is, where you started this segment, nothing changed. Nothing. And clearly they were reaching out because everything could have changed. And what great position to be in where you got to say, nope, business as usual. We're still Portiskeag, we're still Black Tot Rum, all the other things you mentioned.
Yeah. The one thing that I'll add, too, for our friends at the Whisky Exchange, and I'm going to rewind the clock a little bit here. When Westland was purchased by Remy, everyone was concerned. Oh, my gosh, what's going to happen? This independent distillery has sold to a major conglomerate. How is that going to affect the distillery? And the good news was Remy saw what Westland was doing and said, "No, we just want to be a part of this. We'll write the checks and we'll help you grow and we'll all benefit from this from a monetary standpoint." And the word around the rumor mill is that Pernod Ricard, much like Remy when they purchased Westland, Pernod Ricard are taking that same approach with the Whisky Exchange, which is the online retailer, and also Specialty Drinks, which is the UK distribution arm. My understanding is there's a reason they purchased them. They don't want to meddle with something that is easily one of the UK's largest, most successful businesses. So that's a bit of good news, I think, not just for the Whisky Exchange and those that work there, but also from the standpoint of the consumer as well.
Yeah, let me ask you another question here, which is, when this news first broke, and nothing has honestly changed for me since then, but when this news first broke, my first question was, so what is in this for Pernod Ricard? Why is a major global drinks producer getting into retail? And in seeing this quote, e-commerce is a key channel in our long-term strategy. That hasn't answered my question. It has let me know that, well, they're certainly looking at e-commerce. But what is Pernod Ricard going to do with e-commerce? They're now in charge of selling Glenmurray. They're now in charge of selling Kilchoman. They're like the Whisky Exchange has 10,000 products, as we read at the top of this piece. I'm going to go out on a limb and say 99% of those products are not Pernod Ricard products.
I would agree with that. I do wonder if part of it is a savings in distribution within the UK. I also wonder if it is more reach within European countries, because the Whisky Exchange can now ship into European countries once again. And think about the focus that they can put on their own brands, whether it's some of their distilleries, whether it's Beefeater Gin, right, whether it's some of their blends. They now have the ability to reach the tens of thousands of consumers through the email chains. And then now they see their purchasing habits. How interesting is that, to understand your consumers' purchasing habits for you to help to help you create new products that may better appeal to certain segments within the consumer base, depending on their purchasing habits, depending on the country that those people are in. I really see a way to get into the minds of the consumer and into the wallets of the consumer based on all of that consumer data they have. And I don't know about you, but I visit the Whisky Exchange at least twice a week. At least twice a week.
Oh, if you said twice a day, I still wouldn't have disagreed with you. Okay, twice a week, hell
Right?
yeah.
You know,
my wife knows that I visit twice a week.
and I
Twice a day.
And I don't necessarily purchase twice. I sure as heck don't purchase twice a week, but I'm always interested to see what's going on and what new brands there are, new releases. And, you know, I think for a drinker, it's a great destination.
It's interesting. I really like what you're saying about almost this Amazon mindset where you get to learn about consumers and that changes how you operate going forward. And clearly Amazon have been very successful with that. But actually, on that distribution front, I'd reached out to a mutual friend of ours at a distillery in Scotland and said, what's in this for Pernod Ricard? Is this going to be distribution? You know, and this person wrote me back and said, I don't think it's distribution. He wasn't buying that side. They weren't buying that side of the argument. So, which is why I really like your comment here about seeing the buying practices of consumers. That really makes sense to me. That really speaks loudly. So. Yeah. Is there anything you wanted to bring up? I know we've got a couple of stories to get to, and we're around the halfway point here, but is there anything that struck you or anything you uncovered over the last few days?
Not necessarily anything that I've covered over the last few days. The only thing that I'll add here, and it really has nothing to do with this article, except for the fact that anytime I see Rajbir's name, I'm reminded that when you and I were at Blair Castle in April 2019, he was being inducted as a Keeper of the Quaich the same night that I was being inducted as a Keeper of the Quaich. So I kind of like this 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon going on here
with
Rajbir. And he is, you know, we've had Sukhinder on the podcast before, and he was nothing but a gentleman, nothing but a lovely guy. And
he was excellent.
And Rajbir is no different. Somehow about 17 feet taller than Sukhinder. He's a really tall guy. But just a lovely guy. Both sings. Really, really good guys. Dig them.
Yeah. It happens in families. You know, I've got a 6'6" brother and I'm only 6'2". So Jess, when the news first broke, the thing Jess had said was that she was really curious how deals like this even come about, right? And I said, I'm right there with you, right? Did a PR lawyer call up, you know, Sukhinder or Rajbir? Do they go to the Whisky Exchange legal department? You know, is it straight to the accountants? Like, I'm just so curious.
They just went to the FAQ page.
Right,
at the Whisky Exchange.
They just sent an email.
Yeah, just sent an email. Just info@thewhiskeyexchange.co.uk, and there you go.
Okay, let's take a quick break here, and we'll come back with the second quick hit on this episode of Extra Extra.
This next bit of news actually comes from an email that I think a lot of our listeners may have received. If you're on the Friends of Laphroaig email list, then you will most certainly have received this message, quick message, from John Campbell, all right, distillery manager. Yeah.
Which just when you're talking about the email there, I know that when Elijah shared this story with us, he sent us an Instagram link And when I asked Jess if she'd seen it, she mentioned seeing it just break on Twitter. So they really covered the ground with this one. Email, Instagram, Twitter. I'm sure there are pigeons in the sky right now with the news attached to their leg.
I think you're right. The email came in at 10:02 a.m. today in my inbox.
Eastern,
Eastern U.S. time. And the subject said, a message from our friends. That's interesting. A message to our friend. There we go. And so
that makes much more sense.
So the subject line says, a message to our friends from John Campbell. It says, Dear friends, I'm writing today because I wanted you to be the first to know that after much thought, I've decided that the time has come for me to step down as Laphroaig's distillery manager. For a long time, I've been traveling between Islay and the mainland to be with my family, especially after the last 2 years we've all experienced. I've decided to make a permanent move to be closer to them and take up a new challenge at an independent distillery company. So I will be relocating from Islay in mid-November. As you can imagine, this was not an easy decision for me. I've been at Laphroaig for more than a quarter century. Let me repeat that again. I have been at Laphroaig for more than a quarter century. And I am proud to have been the longest-serving distillery manager in its history, following in the footsteps of legends like Ian Hunter and Bessie Williamson, has been the privilege of my life. More than anything, I would like to thank the friends of Laphroaig for all your support throughout my 27 years at Laphroaig and my nearly 16 years as a distillery manager. It's support that comes in all sorts of forms, from helping me grow the visitor center experience at the distillery, supporting the creation of core whiskeys in our range, sharing your ideas on what would make good car chase bottlings, always being honest about how you would like Laphroaig to be. Over the years, we've created a Laphroaig tartan, celebrated together at our bicentennial events all around the world, sung with the Laphroaig choir, met on Islay at Fage, and throughout the year, and best of all, we've shared many drams of Laphroaig together. Laphroaig is an amazing whiskey and a brand that has and will continue to be a part of my life, just as Islay will. I will always remain a friend of Laphroaig myself and will continue to come back and visit my plot and collect some rent. Now we get to the final paragraph here. I'm also sure that thanks to your passion and loyalty, Laphroaig will remain the most renowned and beloved peated single malt on the planet and will continue to grow from strength to strength. Over the next 2 months, I'll be working closely with our expert distillery team to hand the reins over to a new distillery manager that will be announced in due course. I know you will welcome them with open arms as you welcomed me. It's an honor to call myself a friend, and I wish all of you the very best. Slanja, John Campbell, Distillery Manager. That's major news.
That news landed the same way that the sale of the Whisky Exchange landed last week.
Like out of the blue, right? Seemingly out of the blue.
Like no whispers, no rumors. Like there are times when you or I, share some whispers with the other, and there's a sense that something's coming down the line. Nothing. Absolutely nothing on either front. Really quite remarkable in this day and age to have such well-kept, I don't want to say secrets, but well-guarded news, I'll say.
But think about 25 years ago, or actually 27 years ago.
27, yeah.
Now, granted, he's been distillery manager since 2005. So, but still, 2005, that's 16 years of watching him slowly change around the core of the brand. I think he was part of the team that helped reintroduce the Laphroaig 10-year-old cask strength, which is, you and I have said on this podcast and through tastings and just in gatherings, that's always a whiskey you want on your shelf because it's a masterfully designed Laphroaig. What else has he introduced? Was he part of the quarter cask introduction? Do you know?
I was just looking at that on my shelf, and I'm sure that he must have been. He must have been part of the quarter cask design. Also thinking of the Carchus bottlings. That's under John Campbell as well. Yeah. Putting those together for the Friends of Laphroaig. And then there was the lore coming in and then going out.
And, you know, interesting.
The 18, you and I were just talking about the 18 the other week.
The 18, yeah. That one was, you know, sadly gone a while ago. You could hear Dottie meowing in the background, can't you?
I can absolutely hear Dottie meowing in the background. Don't know if your mic will be picking it up quite the same way, but your AirPods are definitely picking it up.
And, you know, on a personal level, this was a man who, for us at Single Cask Nation, he's been a big supporter of us as an independent bottler, not necessarily selling directly to us. Yeah. However, he was keen to be a part of the Great Isle Swim, which was really important to us as a company and to RNLI, Royal National Lifeboat Institute, right? And he knew we were going to be giving back to Isla. You know, this is someone I think who sees important opportunities, and he wanted to make sure Laphroaig was on people's tongues, both from a taste standpoint, but from you know, saying Laphroaig. You know, I think he helped champion that in a multitude of ways, and it's nice to have been a small part of his story.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just thinking of the Isla picture right now, where you've got Georgie Crawford moving, first of all, from Lagavulin off to the Port Ellen project, and then leaving the Port Ellen project. You've got Mickey Heads, you know, retiring and having a successor at Ardbeg. And now you've got John Campbell. Someone else is going to be at the helm at Laphroaig. Like, that's big news.
But there's your three, though, right? Like, everything happens in threes. Let's hope that's you know, I mean, I say let's hope that that's the final change, but I also think change could be really good and can help breathe new excitement into a brand, into a distillery. Like, I think your point is a good one with Georgie leaving Lagavulin, then joining Port Ellen, and now leaving Port Ellen, and it's been announced she's going to be the distillery manager for Elixir Distillers Distillery, right? So the circle of life, and you know, so change isn't necessarily good or bad. It can be both. It can be one or the other, but it's always new and exciting, I think.
According to Heraclitus, it was the very nature of existence is change. So
I had a bad case of Heraclitus many years ago. Thankfully,
I always trust you to keep it highbrow. Fantastic. But there was also a time a few years ago, and I can't quite remember the year, but it was quite recently, where for the first time, I want to say, for the first time in a long time, every one of Isla's distillery managers was an Illich, an Isla person born and raised. They hadn't seen that in a long time, and that was something we actually discussed at Laphroaig with John Campbell.
I recall that.
And he was incredibly proud that the island had Illichs at the helm of each distillery. So you know, that was really, you know, my first thought was, holy shit, John Campbell's leaving Laphroaig. Very quickly after, my second thought was, wow, an Illich is moving to the mainland, right? John Campbell is going to move to the mainland and live there with the family that he mentions early in that announcement.
Yeah.
Like, what a period of transition that is. Not only are you moving away from Beam Suntory, right? Beam Global, like what's his latest name, right? But you're also moving away from the island that has been your home for all of these years and decades. That's serious business, man.
And I don't know if John had an apprentice behind him. I don't think that he did. So it'll be interesting with this new distillery manager coming on, whether she or he will act as a steward solely and just carry on what John was doing, or whether she or he will want to change it up a little bit. And is this going to ring in a new era of Laphroaig? And, you know, we think of all of these distilleries that have very specific styles from one decade to the next. It'll be interesting to see if things start to change around a little bit with Laphroaig.
Well, you think of the transition from Ian Henderson to John Campbell. Things definitely changed at Laphroaig. Things definitely changed with the spirit. Now, what's the distillery manager in charge of, and what's coming down from corporate on high is, you know, it's different from distillery to distillery. But the thing that I wanted to quickly mention is, it takes me back to the conversation we had with Mickey Heads in Chicago.
Yeah.
When Mickey had started out in the industry and was, you know, rolling casks and warehouse and working his way through the ranks. And we'd said to him, did you ever think there would come a day when distillery managers traveled the world being treated like rock stars? And he said, no, never. Never did the thought cross my mind. And it made me think then of sitting in John Campbell's office with him the day we delivered the Great Isla Swim to him, his bottle to him. And they were working on a new, you know, software package on the laptop, a people management, a people scheduling package on his laptop. And he was like, I'm going from meeting to meeting on how to use this new software. And when John Campbell travels the world and comes to your local bar and you get to go visit with him, and maybe he signs a bottle and maybe he talks about designing the new carchess, he also knows that he's in charge of people being on shift at the right time to cover the stills or to be in the warehouses, to be filling up casks, right? There's very much a management role there that is part and parcel of running that distillery that always makes me think of the meme, you know, what my parents think I do in the whiskey industry, what my friends think I do in the whiskey industry, what I think I do in the whiskey industry, and then what I really do in the whiskey industry is fill out spreadsheets.
I want to just say one last thing, because I know there's going to be a certain segment of people that are going to say, well, that's it. Laphroaig are going to go down the tubes. Everything's going to go downhill. There's always going to be that segment of people. And if the transition from Ian Henderson to John Campbell is any indication, things changed a bit. However, Laphroaig remained wonderful. If you think about the transition at Balcones Distillery, when Chip Tate left that distillery, there were so many people that said, I'm not gonna drink any Balcones that Chip Tate didn't distill. Meanwhile, what they don't know but really should know, there was a few other distillers that was doing exactly what Chip Tate was doing, and the whiskey was good and remains good, whether or not Chip was still at the helm. So Laphroaig will remain Laphroaig, regardless of who you have. However, I think it will be very exciting to see what Laphroaig can become, or maybe it just stays the same and they keep on doing what John had them doing.
And I think that's often the take of the corporations that own the distilleries. Laphroaig is in its 206th year, right? John Campbell being with them for just over a quarter of a century is a hell of an achievement for a human being.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's an eighth of, if I've done my very quick math right, it's an eighth of Laphroaig's history, right? That in itself is pretty significant.
Yes.
But I think the point is Laphroaig will continue. Laphroaig will still be there. And when John's gone and we've gone and the rest of the consumers have gone, Laphroaig will probably still be standing there. So, I'm with you. It's always what's next?
Yeah, what's next?
What's it going to look like? But we obviously wish John the absolute best. We still have never had him on One Nation Under Whiskey.
That is true. Wow, that is very true. Oh,
Maybe with a new project and being on the mainland, maybe we'll get him on One Nation Under Whiskey before too much longer.
Well, we know how to get in touch with him, so.
Speaking of getting in touch, if any dear listeners would like to reach out to us, please drop us an email at questions@onenationunderwhiskey.com. As always, there's no E in whiskey. Joshua, these have been two really fascinating stories to chat about for a little while, and they're certainly two stories we've been chatting about since the news broke on each of them. So happy to share some of that with our dear listeners out and about in the world.
Yeah, indeed.
So we're out of here, my friend.
Thanks as always for having me, Jason.
It's always a pleasure. Until the next time, Joshua. Until the next time, dear listeners. Cheers.
2 chins.